Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I returned to Ozark. So Ozark Season 3 Episode 2 will be the review. It is called Civil Union. Full spoilers from the start of this review as always. Now one little bit which I sort of forgot to mention in the last review is the sort of subplot of Wendy and Marty going to the therapist, and this came about as part of an agreement with Charlotte, because Charlotte in the end decided not to emancipate from the family and decided to stay with them. But as part of that agreement, she insisted that they got marriage counselling, because obviously from her point of view their marriage is a bit unhealthy, and I think, for the sake of her and Jonah, she wanted them to go. So I do like that, and there is a scene of them at counselling, and I'll say also the one playing the counsellor or the therapist, however you want to put it. I know her from Sideways. She plays like the Paul Giamatti character's mother in Sideways, and it's hard to forget her really, because she does have a very distinct sort of voice and quite a distinct sort of look. So yeah, she's in Sideways. I'm sure she's been in plenty of other things as well, but she's the one playing like the therapist in this. And it's a pretty memorable scene, I think, because of that. But what we actually find out is that Marty's actually paying her off to take his side on arguments, which is kind of hilarious. So that's something which is an ongoing thing, but it's sort of ironic that he's actually the one breaking the rules, or well, sort of bending them, let's say, not Helen. But we'll obviously come back to that. But anyway, at the start of this episode, we're introduced to a new character who we later find out is Wendy's brother, Ben. And it's a character who has been brought up before, and someone who, just through stories that we've heard Wendy tell or just mentioned with her and Marty, does have this very unstable history where supposedly he was involved in like a shooting at his school or something. Now, because he's sort of out and free, I'm assuming he didn't actually kill anyone, but in any case, he's a teacher. He's teaching at the start of this episode, and I think just to get an insight into kind of how unstable he is mentally, some people in the class, they're looking at their phones and they're sharing like a viral sort of video, and I wasn't sure if it was because of what was on the video that he reacted, or if it was just like reacting to them being rude really in his class and not paying attention and playing a video. But he does go to an extreme, whatever the reason, because he insists and they all give him their phones, and then he chucks them in the dumpster. So he does go to an extreme, and he then sort of becomes very unhinged in the scene, and it leads to him showing up later on in Ozark. He comes, and of course Wendy is put on the spot, and because he's like her brother, she invites him in. Obviously she doesn't really know what's gone on at the school, so I guess from her point of view he's just visiting, but she doesn't really know what's going on. And we get a little bit of him like around the house, having dinner with the birds at one point. He sort of mixed sort of reactions to people towards him in this episode. Marty is very suspicious and very, I think, on edge because of his past, but it sort of looks like Ben's going to be around for a while, so again he could be quite an interesting character. So another thing that goes on in the episode is then Marty and Wendy smooth the sort of like the tensions over between Ruth and Frank, because obviously Ruth, you know, putting Frank Jr. in his place. Well, they offer Frank and his business like extra money, extra percentage from the casino profits as a way to like smooth that out. So for the time being, he's happy, but you just get the feeling then his son and Ruth have a very like volatile relationship, and you can't see the peace being kept for very long in that situation. Also, the big storyline in this episode when it comes to the casino is then there's like this couple who own another casino who the birds get wind of, and they sort of see it as a big competition where they could lose a lot of clientele. So they decide to like buy them out, and this is all part of like the expansion that Wendy suggested to the cartel in the last episode. And it sort of becomes quite vicious because this couple, the Nelsons, something like that, Carsons, I think it was, they sort of stand firm, and obviously you get all this different offers of money and various things, but it's sort of, I think it's partly out of pride that they don't want to sell to like these you know, rich people, and they've sort of been running their own casino for years and they sort of value that. But it's also because I think they believe in themselves and their casino can compete with the birds, so they're actually confident and they don't need to sell. So you can see where it's sort of going with Wendy, because she doesn't take no for an answer. And I think what's sort of like telling and why you're quite sympathetic with this couple is then in some ways they're a bit of a mum and puppet outfit, so there's this sense of them like fighting back and struggling against these sort of richer people or people who are like playing it dirty. Although to be fair, like this couple, that they're not totally innocent, because they do start fighting back and it gets quite vicious, so they're not like totally innocent in the whole thing. But in the end what happens is that Wendy and Ruth start like rigging like their machines, as in this other couple's like casino machines, where it just gives like lots of instant payouts to the point where they wouldn't have enough money and they wouldn't be making a profit, and it just gets out of hand. And I think in the end it's the husband who convinces the wife, then we can't compete, we can't keep doing this because they're not going to go away, they're just going to keep coming back harder. And in the end they do give up and they sort of like sell the casino to them. But it's interesting, then there's a disagreement there between the husband and wife, but in the end, because of what Wendy and Ruth did, Darlene and Wyatt start to bond in this episode, and that's over them respective loss and talking to dead people basically, because Darlene starts talking to Jacob, as she has for a while, although this is the first time we've seen it. So this is sort of perfect because of how close they were and how sort of unhinged she can be, and how you can imagine she's the sort of character who will still hold on to that really from time to time. And it's kind of perfect, this sense of him being there for her from the grave almost, in her mind anyway. And Wyatt walks in on this, and it's a very awkward scene because it's in the kitchen, and at first like she's got her back to him and like talking to Jacob, and it's only because she happens to turn around and he has to like confront this, and you know, he has to say something, otherwise he could have just like went on his way. But he opens up to her, and he says, sometimes I talk to my dad as well, my dad who died, which we've seen in a previous episode. But I think what's clever about the scene is the way it subverts your expectations, because at first you sort of thinking maybe Wyatt's going to freak out, and you can tell that he feels awkward. You sort of sense that it's possible he could like freak out and walk out and just, oh my god, I don't want anything else to do with this woman, she's crazy. But it turns out he's like the perfect person to sort of understand what she's going through, and this idea of, you know, her talking to her dead lover, because he has a similar thing with like the spirit of his dad. So it actually works out quite well, and it's a weird sort of dynamic and feeling that they've got going on with this storyline, because on the one hand it's quite a sweet scene, that, and they are both there for one another, but on the other hand, because of how dangerous Darlene can be and how messed up she can be from a neutral point of view, and because Wyatt is sympathetic and stuff mostly, you do worry for him. You worry for him getting more and more involved and mixed up with Darlene. So that's that stuff. And the only other sort of little thing, which is you feel is going to become quite a big storyline, but Helen gets, you know, her daughter Irene for the summer. She's having this dispute with her husband still, and he lets her sort of like look after Irene like for the summer, and he insists on keeping the son Seth hang out with Jonah and Charlotte. At the end of the episode, I think through sort of blackmail or through force, like Helen has sort of gotten her way with her husband, and you know, with having access to Seth. The FBI have been like sniffing around again, and Trevor, this sort of replacement for Roy, has been like putting pressure on like the Birds, and it comes to the end of the episode where he says, from now on we're going to track what you're doing at this casino. We're going to actually audit, you know, the whole business, so that we can make sure you're not like cheating and laundering money. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe once again, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.